Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We've got waves coming in already. It is a beautiful day out there. A comment from a viewer after yesterday's show. Please remind viewers that today, Tuesday, is school budget voting for Elmira Heights and Horseheads. I would also throw in Corning, of course. This is school budget day, essentially. Get out the vote on a beautiful day for these important issues. As a retired teacher, I know how important it is to support your local educators as they do such a good job, in these challenging times. Thank you very much. Thank you for the comments. We will definitely be reminding people all morning long to get out and vote in the school vote. We've got a lot to get to this morning. And by the way, weigh in on the school vote. If you have any last minute endorsements, are you pro-budget, anti-budget, whatever the case may be, let me know. You can reach out at any time at that number on the bottom of your screen. What is happening? I know this is completely different than perhaps other topics we would normally discuss. What is happening with Graceland? Did you see that it's going to be auctioned amid a foreclosure? That, of course, is Elvis Presley's mansion. I think it goes without saying. It's kind of synonymous with Elvis. It's got a dramatic legal battle ahead from his granddaughter, Riley, I don't know how you pronounce that last name, who called the pending sale fraudulent. A notice from Shelby County Courthouse states that Graceland and its surrounding property in Memphis, Tennessee, will be auctioned off to the highest bidder for cash on May the 23rd. So get your checkbooks, folks. Coe, who's 34, the current owner of the property and granddaughter of the King of Rock and Roll, is fiercely contesting the sale. She filed a lawsuit calling the auction a sham. Her attorney secured a temporary restraining order. An injunction hearing is set for Wednesday. A source says that Keough, K-E-O-U-G-H, is traumatized at what has unfolded and never thought that a historic piece of property could even be considered to go into the hands of any random stranger. There's so much money that was made at Graceland. It is essentially a tourist destination with a lot of, the way I understand it, interactive museum-type displays. I guess it stems from a 2018 deed of trust that Riley's late mother, Lisa Marie Presley, allegedly signed, securing a $3.8 million loan with Graceland as collateral. Wow, this is going to be an interesting case to watch as it unfolds. I just saw it this morning, and every once in a while we throw in something a little bit different than just the news of the day, though I would argue that is the news of the day. Now, we have a lot to talk about with Biden. Quite a few things here about Trump's trial. Some interesting back and forth. Even CNN saying maybe the prosecutor's case isn't as strong as we thought. That kind of the heartbreak there. There's really no case to begin with. There still has not been a clear definition of the crime, has there? Or have I missed that? And as CNN's Eli Honig said, actually what Michael Cohen admitted to yesterday, stealing from Trump, is more serious of a crime than falsifying business records. But we'll talk about some of that. A few New York State issues as well. A lot of international issues. First of all, we talked about this yesterday, but we were talking about what we expected from President Biden's speech at Morehouse College. We talked about it extensively yesterday, but because it's starting to kind of fade from the news cycle, as political stories like this do, I wanted to mention a few things about it that I thought were really interesting. The New York Post editorial board said President Biden's message for fresh-faced African-American college grads. America is racist, and black Americans are set up to fail. In his Sunday commencement speech at historically black Morehouse College in Atlanta, the president vowed to call out the poison of white supremacy and to root out systemic racism. It's natural to wonder if democracy actually works for you, he told the ranks of young black men and black Americans. Have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot. This is what the president said at that graduation ceremony. He also threw Israel under the bus yet again, and we're going to be talking about that. Yesterday we had at that point, breaking news story of the ICC putting out that warrant for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll talk about that a little bit. because it all ties in with a bigger picture of something we've talked about extensively on this program. Of course, the college campus protests, etc. And that's one of the reasons why Biden continues to throw Israel under the bus, because he's worried about re-election and this anti-Semitism that has creeped in to the Democratic Party. But he called for an immediate ceasefire, as you know, and assuring the crowd he supports peaceful, nonviolent protests, a fine way to describe demonstrators that have included assaults on police and destruction of property. The speech was divisive, defeatist, and condescending. Hardly the, oh, the places you'll go, inspiring message college grads deserve. Yes, when they reach that, what at that point is probably or arguably the pinnacle of their life at that point, that to instead say, congratulations, great for you. You can do anything you dream of. It was condescending, as he said here, or as a post said here, defeatist. But it's also revealing. Joe is now a one-trick pony, and that trick is pandering, and pandering hard to the left. Look, Biden is hemorrhaging support among Black, Hispanic, and young voters, but mainly among the working class, which is furious at what he's done to the economy: bitter inflation, soaring interest rates, few new jobs, accepting government or health care, and, of course, the border. Yes, and you also look at these college protests where Biden continues to really encourage the protests in many ways. And think of all the working class people out there trying to just make it with the high inflation and all the economic woes that we are facing. They see, as they turn on the nightly news, the protests and the anti-Semitism and the hate and the violence, and they realize that their tax dollars are going to pay for college educations, quote-unquote educations. And this is what is being taught. But I'll continue. Yeah, all he or his handlers can think to do is pander to the academic elitists. Who he wasn't talking to is, in his demented diatribe, was average Black Americans who are worried about paying the mortgage and putting food on the table. Biden isn't losing their support because he hasn't apologized often enough for America's supposed racism. Voters of all races are tired of seeing their wallets drained by the disaster of Bidenomics. Biden asked, what is democracy if a trail of broken promises still leaves Black communities behind? Well, they may not love the last guy, but working class Black voters enjoyed a strong economy and a record low unemployment rate in the Trump years. They're not going to accept Biden's race talk as an adequate substitute. The reasons Black voters overwhelmingly support Democrats are deep-rooted, but enthusiasm for Biden is another matter. Per recent Washington Post Ipsos polling, just 62% of Blacks say they are absolutely certain to vote this year, a 12 percentage point drop from June of 2020. In other words, however well democracy is working, more and more Black Americans are doubting that Biden is working for them, and offering them nothing but victimhood won't turn that around. So that's the New York Post editorial board, and I want to tie that in, and I know we're starting off with a story that we started off with yesterday, but this is, and I've mentioned this gentleman before. His name is Adam Coleman, Adam B. Coleman. He's the author of Black Victim to Black Victor and founder of Wrong Speak Publishing. He wrote a opinion piece on this, pardon me, for the New York Post as well, and he says Joe Biden was racist and patronizing in his speech to Morehouse grads. Joe Biden is right. Black people are treated as negatively, different, inferior, and undeserving of being seen as equal. The culprit of such behavior, Joe Biden himself. He's incapable of speaking to Black people without reminding us of past plights or ones that we're all supposedly dealing with today as an emotional ploy to leverage our votes. Worse even, in the face of success and celebratory triumph, like graduating from college, Joe Biden is unable to let us have our moment to reflect on what we were capable of doing. And what a great point. That's why I wanted to bring up Mr. Coleman's article here, because it's not about what you can accomplish. It's starting you out literally on graduation day and saying, probably not going to make it. It's just, we're too messed up of a society here in America. Instead, he patronizes. I always have trouble with that word. Telling us what he believes we won't be able to achieve. On Sunday at Morehouse College, Joe Biden gave a speech that was masquerading as a commencement address. It was littered with identity politics, Black trauma narratives, and an emphasis on how our existence is determined by how much struggle we must endure. And he goes on to quote the same quotes that we've been bringing up the last 2 days. And Mr. Coleman says, I don't throw statements like this around often because I take them very seriously. Joe Biden is a racist. Matter of fact, he's the worst type of racist because he pretends to be your friend while pulling you back every time you attempt to move forward. Now, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, and this is why I bring it up. Because it's obviously a different take. Really, the media just focused on the fact that some people turned their backs to him, and that also he supported an immediate ceasefire. That was the big takeaways from the kind of legacy media. So that's why I wanted to bring you this kind of alternative to that and get your opinion on it. Again, this is by Adam Coleman, the author of Black Victim to Black Victor. He's a friend who only calls you when he wants something, meaning Joe Biden, and is never there for you when you're in need. Joe Biden only showed up at Morehouse and other meetings featuring black people recently because his polling numbers among black Americans are decreasing, and he needs us again to stay in power. But every time he shows up and speaks to us, he can't help himself. He's the black cloud ready to rain on your parade, or in this case, our graduation. Biden talks about being black and loving this country when it doesn't love you back. But the only relationship I see lacking love is coming from Biden, not America. Joe Biden doesn't like or love black people, and he made that clear when he declared our identity is contingent on if we help to give him back power in 2020. If you recall, at the time, he famously said, quote, "If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black." If you recall that quote. Yes, that is, if you're new, that is new to the show. That is an exact quote from the President of the United States. You wonder what would happen if that were said by a Republican contender, but I'll continue. Friends don't use our times of celebration to make it about themselves, and they don't use painful narratives to extract love from us either. The Morehouse commencement speech should have featured words of wisdom to prepare these young graduates for what they might encounter and encourage to push through life's obstacles. These young scholars need inspiration, not condescension. Instead of using the trope of how we must work in multiple times harder than white people to find the same success, he should have told them to fight for whatever they want to in life, despite any obstruction placed in their way. But this sentiment is impossible to get from Joe Biden because the Democratic playbook is to reassure our victimhood status, not overcome it. So that's a piece by, again, Adam B. Coleman, the author of Black Victim to Black Victor. I'd like to get your opinion on that. We're going to cover a lot of things this morning. We're going to be jumping all around because we have so much to get to. Now, Biden, I'm running late, but Biden administration sends its condolences to Iran. We're going to talk about that when we come back. A couple of other things, too, as we, I know one thing, and I normally try to kind of stay in order, from Biden to Trump to New York, those type of things. But if you ever want to be successful in Hollywood, or maybe not even successful financially, meaning that your movie or TV show or whatever the case may be might not be successful and may not make a lot of money, but if you want to get a standing ovation, make a movie about a Republican president, past or present, and make it vicious, make it nasty, make it filled with unsubstantiated rumors, and you will get a standing ovation. We'll talk about that when we come back, so stay with us. Our first break, we're just getting warmed up here on Frankly Speaking. And we are back with Frankly Speaking. We've got a comment here. If Trump turns things around, Biden will take credit for it by saying that it was a delayed reaction from his administration, that Trump is riding on Joe's legacy. Yes, that is normally how that works. So when you experience the bad times, like we are right now economically, well, foreign policy as well, when those things are changed, like Trump did with the border and so many other issues, yes, they always try to take credit after the fact, take credit for the Republican president's successes. But Donald Trump it's not Donald Trump. A new movie called The Apprentice is out at Cannes Film Festival. And it's got many disturbing scenes in it, attacking, I guess not attacking is not the right word, maybe rewriting history because it's based on a true story. You know how they can do that. And it's got, I don't want to get too graphic because it's early. Kids could be watching on their way to school. But there's a lot going on here, trying to paint Trump as really evil. And there's so many objectionable scenes in this movie. But as I mentioned, it was such as, just to give you kind of the weakest suggestions they made, that he was popping amphetamine pills, getting liposuction, and having surgery to remove his bald spot. That's just those are the positive aspects of Trump in this movie. Now, why do I mention this? Because this happened, I recall, with George W. Bush as well. If you make a movie that is vicious towards a Republican president, or in this case, a past Republican president who's now the leading frontrunner in the presidential race for, well, obviously Republican side, it will get you all the attention. It probably won't be successful. Keep that in mind. But if you have the money to invest and make a movie that badmouths a Republican president, again, you will probably lose your money on it. But in this case, at Cannes, receiving a 11-minute standing ovation in the post-screening of the film The Apprentice. This is absolutely no surprise. This could have been one of the worst movies, and maybe it is, that you've ever seen. But if you're in Cannes and it's bad-mouthing a Republican, it will definitely get you a standing ovation. I just had to pass that along in case you haven't heard about it. It does not come as a surprise that the Hollywood would be headed in this direction. Okay, let's move along here because we have a lot to cover. The Biden administration did send condolences to Iran after the helicopter crash that we brought you the story yesterday. The United States expresses its official condolences for the death of Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi, Foreign Minister, and other members of their delegation in a helicopter crash in northwest Iran. As Iran selects a new president, we reaffirm our support for the Iranian people and their struggle for human rights and fundamental freedoms. Now, our Congressman, Nick Langworthy, weighed in on this condolence, saying, "It's absolutely outrageous and un-American that the Biden administration sent condolences to Iran for the death of President Raisi, known as the Butcher of Tehran. This is a man responsible for massacring political prisoners and dissidents, propagating terrorism, and committing countless other crimes against humanity. President Biden's actions not only undermine the values we stand for as a nation, but also, and I lost my place, undermines the value we stand for as a nation, but also disrespects the countless victims who suffered under Raisi. This is another disgusting example of President Biden's appeasement of Iran, a weakness on the world stage that emboldens terrorist regimes, threatening global stability and our way of life." And I appreciate, and I'm sure many would agree, I appreciate that comment from Congressman Nick Langworthy. I thought it was a powerful statement that he made, and a necessary one, unfortunately. And, that ties in with the foreign policy in general. Did you see, I shouldn't be jumping around so much this morning, but I do feel like that's just the kind of morning we're going to have because there's so much to get to. And sometimes I think of something as we speak that I read earlier in the morning or late yesterday. But there was a lot of talk about how bad our foreign policy has been since the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. Now we see the weakness with our ally in reference to Israel. So maybe we'll talk. I don't want to get too much into that, but here it is. A former NATO commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan testified to Congress last month that he advised the Biden administration that a full withdrawal of troops from the war-torn nation of Afghanistan would go very bad, very fast. Retired Army General Austin Scott Miller told members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee in an April 15th transcribed interview that going to zero troop presence would have left the Western-backed government vulnerable to a Taliban offensive like the one which overran the country in August of 2021. Quote, "My recommendation was that we retain a footprint. I could not rule out a need for a surge down the road to protect forces. But at the same time, I didn't necessarily think it was the most likely. My view was that going to zero, things would go very bad very fast. And of course, I define that as not prepared for a political or a security collapse while we're still present. Just wouldn't be prepared." I just thought that was interesting, some newsworthiness to piggyback off of that with the failed policies, foreign policies of this administration. You can weigh in. Now, yesterday we brought you the story, and I'm running late. All right, we brought you the story about the ICC. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Don't forget, today is the school vote, the budget vote. So get out and have your voice heard, and it's not too late if you'd like to comment during today's broadcast. Are you pro or con the school budget votes throughout our area? What about candidates? You can put in your endorsement as well. Corning has Elmira Heights, Horseheads, all up for that vote today. So Amal Clooney, I think that's how you pronounce it, Amal. That's George Clooney's wife, helped convince ICC prosecutors to issue arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas leaders. Now, to, I guess, his credit, for lack of a better term, Biden did rip the outrageous arrest warrants. The ICC prosecutors' application for arrest warrants against Israel leaders is outrageous. And let me be clear, whatever this prosecutor might imply, there is no equivalence, none, between Israel and Hamas. We will always stand with Israel against threats to its security, he concluded, that unless that means sending munitions in a timely fashion. Unless that means constantly calling for a ceasefire like was in effect on October the 6th. Those type of ceasefires. But I don't know, whatever you think about that last statement, we will always stand with Israel against threats to its security. I don't believe that, but at least he did condemn this arrest warrant issuance. And I do agree that there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas, but that's what this is suggesting. Benjamin Netanyahu weighed in on this, condemning the decision by the International Criminal Court, saying the outrageous decision by the ICC prosecutor Karim Khan to seek arrest warrants against the democratically elected leaders of Israel is a moral outrage of historic proportions. It will cast an everlasting mark of shame on the International Court. Israel is waging a just war against Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization that perpetrated the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Hamas massacred 1,200 Jews, raped Jewish women, burned Jewish babies, took hundreds hostage. Now, in the face of these horrors, Mr. Khan creates a twisted and false moral equivalence between the leaders of Israel and the henchmen of Hamas. This is like creating a moral equivalence after September 11th between President Bush and Osama bin Laden, or during World War II between FDR and Hitler. What a travesty of justice. What a disgrace. The prosecutor's absurd charges against me and Israel's defense minister are merely an attempt to deny Israel the basic right of self-defense. And I assure you of one thing. This attempt will utterly fail. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were totally defenseless against our enemies. Those days are over. Now the Jewish people have a state, and we have an army to defend our state. Notwithstanding the blood libels Mr. Khan has leveled, Israel will continue to wage this war in full compliance with international law. We will continue to take unprecedented measures to get innocent civilians out of harm's way and to ensure that humanitarian assistance reaches those in need in Gaza. Mr. Khan also sets a dangerous precedent that undermines every democracy's right to defend itself against terror organizations and aggressors. The ICC has no jurisdiction over Israel, and Mr. Khan's action will not stop us from waging our just war against Hamas. But Mr. Khan's abuse of this authority will turn the ICC into nothing more than a farce. He's doing something else. He is callously pouring gasoline. This is a PowerPoint, and I've got to say, Benjamin Netanyahu has had such powerful speeches since October 7th and before, but some are moving, and I think this is a very good point. He is callously pouring gasoline on the fires of anti-Semitism that are raging across the world. And it is. This anti-Semitism is raging across the world. It is so powerful here in the United States that it has changed Biden's foreign policy, withholding the ammunition from Israel. It's also had him pandering, like in that speech in Morehouse, to the pro-Hamas wing of his party because he's scared for votes. So it's happening here and throughout the world. So I'm glad that Netanyahu, again, has called this out. Everybody should be calling it out. But he now stands alongside those infamous German judges who donned their robes and upheld laws that denied the Jewish people their most basic rights and enabled the Nazis to perpetrate the worst crime in history. 2 weeks ago on Holocaust Memorial Day, I pledged this. No amount of pressure and no decision in any international forum will prevent Israel from defending itself against those who seek our destruction. To all the enemies of Israel, including their collaborators in The Hague, I renew that pledge today. Israel will wage our war against Hamas until the war is won, because never again is now. Netanyahu also said in Hebrew, this is exactly what the new anti-Semitism looks like. It moved from the campuses in the West to the court at The Hague. Yeah, campuses, and he's exactly right. It has spread, and that's why, I mean, I know there was times where I was getting some messages that let's not just talk about the college campus protests, which I understood the sentiment there, but we had the fear early on of how this would spread. And those fears became founded when you see the Biden administration changing their decisions to appease the protesters, when you saw the grown-ups in the administration cave to their list of demands. It was a slippery slope, and we saw it very, very early on. Mike Pompeo said that Biden should restore Trump's sanction on the ICC. The broken and corrupt ICC is targeting Israel for defending itself. The Biden administration should immediately reinstate sanctions against the ICC. Now, Richard Goldberg, and we're not going to talk too much about this, but there's a couple, I think, really interesting pieces on this and a little bit more on kind of this anti-Semitism. But Richard Goldberg says defund ICC's kangaroo court as it wages anti-Israel lawfare. And I think lawfare is going to be the new term of the decade, perhaps. Washington must act decisively by threatening financial sanctions against any bank that processes a transaction for or on behalf of the ICC. Its officials should face asset freezes and visa denials, and the ICC's leading donors must be put to a choice: stand with democracy and the rule of law, or stand with terrorist sympathizers using lawfare to undermine both. The ICC should not be dismissed as symbolic or a joke. The institution is misusing law as a weapon of war, and the United States should act accordingly. What do you think Hamas is thinking with all this? They see the ICC react in this way. They see Israel's ally, America, caving and throwing Israel under the bus every chance. They see the protests of these kids and grown-ups, and they're not kids, I know, I'm sorry, force of habit. These college students, the faculty, the staff. There was a video the other day of someone literally flying a Hamas flag at one of these protests. And then when there's destruction, there's violence, and the police are called in, who ends up being the bad guys? It's the police. It's this defund police. It's this pro-Hamas mindset that has come to the forefront. There's no denying it in the Democrat Party, because you see Biden changing his decisions to try to pander for those votes. But imagine what Hamas, they just must be laughing as they see, unfortunately, kind of to Benjamin Netanyahu's point, caving to the radical anti-Semitism. The New York Post editorial board said the International Criminal Court proved itself the dangerous joke it is on Monday by seeking arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and the defense minister. The two men are accused of pursuing Hamas terrorists in Gaza through the ICC papers over that critical fact by charging them with willful killing, starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, and willfully causing great suffering. Sorry, the only people Israel is guilty of willfully killing and causing to suffer are the terrorists. And that's what's and that's what happens in war. You kill the enemy. Especially in a war, the enemy started in a bid to eradicate you. Yes, again, very often glanced over, like with the ICC, glanced over by the media, glanced over by the protesters. Hamas started this during a ceasefire, by the way, on October 7th. Accusing Israel of war crimes is akin to saying it has no right to defend itself. The ICC seems to want Israel destroyed. Yes, civilians in Gaza have been collateral damage, as in any war, but civilian casualties are not war crimes. More important, Israel's military goes out of the way, even risking its own soldiers' lives to protect civilians in Gaza. That led to a lower ratio of civilians to combatants killed than in any comparable modern war, as West Point urban warfare expert John Spencer has documented. Add to the absurdity the ICC's morally perverse bid to seem fair by also seeking warrants for some leaders of Hamas. Yes, these terrorists are war criminals. Their own GoPro footage from October 7th is ample proof, just for starters. But the ICC is implicitly suggesting Hamas's cold-blooded savages who target innocent civilians for murder, rape, and kidnapping are the same as their law-abiding democratic victims who merely seek to eradicate the terror gang in the wake of those atrocities. The court's announcement will unleash new waves of anti-Semitism, emboldening Hamas, which is surely having a good laugh at the idea of arrest warrants, prolong the war and cost more lives. And then, of course, if there is a ceasefire, you have all that time for Hamas to build back up. But to top it all off, the ICC has no jurisdiction over Israel, which is not a member of the court. As Secretary of State Antony Blinken notes, the body has no jurisdiction over this matter. It was created as a court of limited jurisdiction, and those limits are rooted in principles that do not appear to have been applied here. Plus, warrants for non-ICC members like Israel raise the specter of similar actions against Americans. No wonder even President Biden, who himself has unfairly ripped Israel for pursuing Hamas, blasted the ICC's announcement as outrageous. America and Israel refused to join the court for precisely this reason. True justice can't be trusted to officials who harbor anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic animus and care little about facts and right and wrong. If those warrants are issued, anyone behind them should be subjected to U.S. reprisal. All right, we've got to take a break because I'm running late. We've got some things here about the presidential race. I know we're covering a lot this morning. Don't forget to get out and vote. Set your alarm. I believe it opens at 8. Set your alarm. Do not forget to vote. And I want you, if you don't mind, to make your, I don't know if you call it endorsement. Just which way would you like to see the vote go? And this is in any district. Just let me know which district you're talking about, and we'll call it an endorsement. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. All right, let's take another break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking. What do you think of that ad by Pangea Global Tea House in Watkins? And a special Frankly Speaking deal. I like that. Frankly Delicious. I think that's a great name. That's a first for the program, so I appreciate that. That I will be playing frequently, and I hope that you can go out and get the specially named Frankly Delicious for Frankly Speaking lunch or dinner. Okay, just tying in my last little thing about just Israel in general and what some of the policies or maybe things that the Democrat Party emphasizes, puts emphasis on. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, has backed a New York bill limiting donations to Israeli settlements. Under the bill, New York nonprofits that provide financial support to Israel's military or settlements could be sued for at least $1 million and lose their tax-exempt status. A long-shot effort by left-leaning New York state lawmakers to curtail financial support for Israeli settlements has drawn a big-name backer, but she doesn't have a vote in Albany. Yeah, so just going out of her way, just to show you where she stands. She has no say in Albany. So she just wants you to know that she does not want anybody providing financial support to Israel's military or settlements. Just another example, folks. Did you see, as we were talking about Biden, and we're going to talk a little bit about the campaign here. You know what? Before we talk about Biden, and since I just mentioned AOC and I mentioned Albany, there's a couple of things, and I want to pick your brain on it here. By the way, also picking your brain on what do you think of today's school budget votes. There's also members running for school, the school board, what you think as well. Please let me know. So Eric Adams has been receiving some backlash, and some of it is because of the campus protests. Now, keep in mind, just like we saw with the administration at these colleges, they don't get in trouble until the police are involved. The issues have never been about letting these violent, destructive protests happen or continue to happen. That's never been the problem. The problem when, like, Shafiq from Columbia is censored, or I don't think they use the term censored, but a no confidence vote, when she received a no, why was it? Why was that? It's because she had the audacity to call police in to end the destruction and the hate and the intimidation of Jewish students. That's where the problem becomes. So that's why many New Yorkers are upset with Mayor Adams in New York City. And you're saying, why am I bringing up the mayor of New York City? Well, on Sunday, former Governor Andrew Cuomo appeared at the First Baptist Church of Crown Heights in Brooklyn and forcefully criticized the city for its incompetence in managing public housing. And then continue, Mr. Cuomo and Mr. Williams have not declared if they intend to run for mayor, but that's what this all ties into. We know that former governor, disgraced governor, Andrew Cuomo, has something up his sleeve. We don't know what that is, mind you, but clearly wants to stay in the public eye, clearly wants to run for something, whether it's governor again, which that's tough on the optics on that, running against Governor Hochul. But maybe it's mayor. It's not going to be like an Eliot Spitzer who ran for comptroller. He wants something more to be in the limelight, former Governor Cuomo. But Mayor Adams said he is not concerned about disgraced former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo possibly eyeing his job. Asked if he thought Cuomo would make a run against him in 2025, Adams told reporters he wasn't sweating it. I'm not concerned with that. I'm concerned with governing this amazing city. You don't spend 35 years climbing to the top of the mountain and worry about the view. You enjoy the view. Insiders have said Cuomo, who resigned from office in 2021 while facing accusations of sexual misconduct, might decide to throw his hat in the race as he mounts a political comeback. And as I mentioned over the weekend, saying 2 years of government incompetence. Interesting. On Monday, Adams laughed off the suggestion that he'd been betrayed by Cuomo for the piercing review of his administration. I don't feel betrayed. Many people have their opinions. That's just life in the big city, he said. I don't know. Yeah, Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, has something up his sleeve. What it is, we don't know. Do you think it'll be a run for mayor? Do you think it'll be a run for governor? Do you wish he would not run for anything, that we wouldn't have to talk about Cuomo anymore? Those are your options. I think I might know which way you're headed on this. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Biden. We're going to talk about the presidential race in general. We do have a few things here about President Trump and that trial. I know it got a little chaotic yesterday. We're going to talk about that. What the future holds. Do we have? We have a lot on that, actually, and I don't want to spend too much time on a couple other kind of hodgepodge of things, but we got to take a short break. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Stock up and save at GCP Discount Liquors and Wines. 1.5-liter Cavit Pinot Grigio, regularly $15.99, is on sale for $12.99. Save $2 a bottle with mail-in rebate, or $36 on a case of 6. 1.75-liter Canadian Club Whiskey on sale for $18.99. Save $5 a bottle with rebate, or $48 on a case of 6. GCP Discount Liquors and Wines in Horseheads, the best in service, selection, and price.
Summer's here, and with a new Toyota, you can capture all the moments that make summer, summer. Like driving a RAV4 to wade in a waterfall.
Nice.
Cruising to play mini golf in a Camry. Or taking a Tundra to the beach.
You're not gonna leave me here, are you?
Get a new Tundra or Tundra iForce Max with 1.99% APR for 48 months plus $1,000 TFS Subvention APR cash. Or lease a new 2024 Tundra for just $499 a month.
Your summer starts here.
Toyota, let's go places.
It's a season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. A comment from a viewer. With all these politicians speaking from church, isn't there supposed to be a separation of church and state? No, I think they're allowed to do some campaigning. And I don't even think, I mean, if you really think about that, it's just Cuomo speaking as a citizen. I mean, he's not in any elected office at this point. But it is interesting, to your point, when church and state is thrown around and when it isn't. That's always kind of fascinating to me. Couple of quick things here. Where do I want to go from here? I want to mention this because we're going to be talking with our good friend Michael Joseph, I believe, on tomorrow's program. And we talked with him during the Black History Month special that we put together and all the work that he's done with the Tuskegee Airmen. And he was the one that set up that amazing Tuskegee Airmen interview for me. Well, he had mentioned this during our talk, and that was months ago, and I wanted to highlight, I'm going to put it up on the screen here, it's Return of the Red Tails presents Remembering Tuskegee Airmen. May 25th, Wings of Eagles Discovery Center in Horseheads from 10 a.m. till noon. Included in the event will be the last recorded interview of Lieutenant Herbert Thorpe, and that's who we had the honor of speaking with early on in this program. Presenter Michael A. Joseph. Master of Ceremonies Don Jenkins. There'll be family members, question and answer, as you see there, airman presentation and display, faithful pursuit, show car, rededication, military aircrafts and vehicles. Tickets just $25, which includes a T-shirt and a program. 10 and under, absolutely free. So we're going to be talking with him on tomorrow's broadcast, but I wanted to highlight that for you if you're making your plans for the weekend already. So I think we're good. Yes, school vote is today. I know I'm going to hit on that a lot. If you have anything you'd like to say about that, please let it be known. 607-358-3131. Did you see that Biden suggested that he was vice president during the pandemic? These are the kind of things you don't see on the mainstream media that often. Trying to kind of hide these blunders, if you want to call them blunders or gaffes. He declared Sunday that things got kind of bad when he was vice president during the COVID-19 pandemic, even though the virus hit more than 3 years after he had left office. The 81-year-old Biden, who finished his 8 years as Barack Obama's vice president in January of 2017, suggested he was still in the post at the time of the outbreak. This is what he said at a campaign event with the NAACP. Quote, "When I was vice president, things were kind of bad during the pandemic. And what happened was Barack said to me, go to Detroit, help fix it." Well, the poor mayor, he spent more time with me than he ever thought he's going to have to, the president pointed out. Now, it's actually kind of unclear what he was even referencing. Clearly not the pandemic. I mean, I don't know why in a global pandemic you would just go to Detroit anyway. It's unclear what event Biden was actually referring to in his remarks. Though the then VP claimed in 2011 the Obama administration had saved America's auto industry from the brink of extinction following the 2008 financial crisis. So it's things like this, it's these kind of mistakes that I think, and I know so many people have had this discussion, but why I'm still not convinced that there's going to be the presidential debate. And I have someone else who's weirdly on my side over that I'll bring to your attention a little bit later on. But when there's a little bit of off the cuff or a little bit of ad-libbing, it normally goes very poorly. Now, again, and you've heard me say this time and time again, if there is a presidential debate, the bar has been set so low for Biden. Not just by Trump, not just by Republicans who did this during the State of the Union as well, but by the media, because they know then if they set the bar so low, well, really he just needs to have one sentence that they can highlight over and over again in the highlight reel, and then they'll call it a huge victory, a huge win. But when you see statements like this, now again, don't think for one moment he won't be as practiced as he possibly can be for the debates. He'll have a general idea of what the questions will be. Now, whether or not you fall on the side that says maybe he'll be given the questions, a Donna Brazile, Hillary Clinton scenario, or if not, even if you don't accept that or believe that's going to be the case, you still got to know that immigration is going to come up, abortion's going to come up. You'll at least have a somewhat of an outline. Yeah, they may throw some crazy question in there at some point. Most likely, you'll have a good idea of what the topics are going to be. So he will have practiced so extensively, like with the State of the Union. Even his don't think differently, that even any kind of ad lib that he does or any kind of joke or dig he takes at Trump's expense, that will be so well rehearsed. Nothing will actually be off the cuff, or at least that's what his handlers are hoping for. And even if there is, it'll be short. It won't be any type of long rambling ad lib, because when he does, you get statements like this, that when I was vice president, things were kind of bad during the pandemic. And what happened was Barack said to me, go to Detroit, help fix it. I mean, I don't know. Now, they also said this is his second blunder in recent memory, where the other blunder was in Morehouse College, where he's caught on camera applauding the valedictorian who called for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. I don't think that's a gaffe. That's what he wants. I mean, that's what he said in his speech. He wants a permanent, immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The same way there was a permanent ceasefire before October 7th. On October 6th, there was a permanent and immediate ceasefire. And yet Hamas didn't follow the rules. Go figure. So I don't know why the New York Post would put those in even the same category as a gaffe. Yeah, so he continues. They continue to talk about that as a big gap. But no, okay, during the pandemic, interesting. I don't even know what to think of it. But we do have to take our last break of this hour. We do have a lot to cover still this morning, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Our beautiful view of Marcus Street on another beautiful day. It's 6:55 on this Tuesday. Thanks for joining us on Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. And I wanted to mention, I know yesterday we talked with Linda Teeter, and it was so nice to talk with her from Steuben Senior Services Fund. We do not have a Steuben Senior Services Fund interview this morning, but we will have one tomorrow. As I said, I believe Michael Joseph is going to be our guest. We've got a lot of guests coming up this week, and I am going to rebroadcast at some point, I hope, the Glass Fest interview that we had a couple weeks ago, because this weekend is Glass Fest, and I want to get you all the information you need to know about that upcoming big event here in Corning. So we have some comments here that we'll get to at the top of the hour. Again, I don't want to talk too much about this debate. We're going to have an update from what James Carville, the Raging Cajun, thinks is going to happen during the debate. But I just go back to that point where the president says that he was vice president during the pandemic and that he had to go to Detroit to fix it. The media can brush these off as they have been the whole time of, that's just misspeaking. It does not look good, especially during the debates, because you got to remember, a lot of people that watch the debates aren't necessarily everyday political students. This may be some of the only times they really go out of their way to watch news about the presidential election. Because let's face it, it does get a little old. It does get a little tedious at points as we near November, when all the coverage is focused on whatever Trump scandal that they can bring up, try to fabricate out of thin air, or how great Biden's doing, or what you know what it is. It gets very frustrating. And as that one piece said yesterday, they're going to have some type of October surprise every day, which will be some trumped up, no pun intended, scandal involving Trump. And a lot, it's going to be interesting with this court case, this hush money trial, which we'll talk about in the next hour, how that plays into all of this. But for some people who aren't necessarily politically minded, but at the same time feel as if it's much must-watch TV, which is the debates, if they happen. I'm still not convinced they will happen, but a lot of people will tune in. Now, the first one is very early in June. Now, normally Labor Day is when things get really heated when it comes to the presidential races from there on out, and all races. But to have this in June gives Biden a couple options. If it doesn't go well, they can always cancel the last one. Or it's so far out, their thought is that they can maybe correct it, overcome it. Or if they do really well, what's to say, hey, we did one, and then the next time say, we're not going to give Trump the platform like last time. They're really in the catbird seat right now. They really have the power here. Trump somewhat painted himself into a corner by saying anytime, anywhere, any place. But I think really at the end of the day, it was Trump who called Biden's bluff. I don't think Biden wanted any of these debates, hence a June debate and just a weird time frame of all this. And also only guaranteeing only agreeing to two debates, and then maybe one vice presidential debate. I have not heard an update on that. Maybe you have. If you have, let me know. But when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the debates, a little bit about hush money, read your comments, all that and much more. Don't forget, today is a day to vote for the school budget and the school board. Make sure you mark your calendars. If you have any last minute, I don't like to say predictions, any last minute endorsements you'd like to make, either on the budget or on a candidate, feel free to text at any time. And we'll be right back, starting hour number 2 in mere moments. Don't go anywhere. And we are back trying to do a little research. I got a question during the break, and I don't have a clear answer for you. The question is, what time do polling locations open for school voting? Well, that depends on where you're at. In Corning, it's 11 till 8. So kind of a late start in Corning 11. In Horseheads, it's 7 a.m. till 9, though I'd recommend you wait until after Frankly Speaking. By the way, this is Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hasselson studio. This is hour number 2, and I'll continue in Elmira. It looks as if it is from 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. So you can find out more by searching your school district online. But those are the quick ones that I was able to find during breaks. But do not forget to get out and vote and let me know what you think. Are you pro the budget? Okay, we got a lot of no's. Okay. Show community what money is being spent on. This viewer saying, and I'm going to try to read all statements about the school votes, endorsements, as long as you keep it clean. Try to read all of them. This is from a viewer that says, vote no on library today. Show community what money is being spent on. I believe that is in reference to Corning. We had that, our guest on from the Corning library. So keep those, I don't want to say endorsements, whatever you want to say. Keep them coming in. I know yesterday we had quite a few no's. This morning we had a yes, meaning not for the library, for the school budgets in general. Now, I do want to preface in Corning, the school vote, the budget vote is completely separate, even though it's on the same day on the ballot from the library vote. Those are two separate entities. They just have to do it at the same time. All right, so we were talking about presidential debates. And you know my theory. I've been saying from the beginning, probably not going to happen. We did have a comment from a viewer that said, if Biden does poorly at the debate, Democrats will probably spin it to pave the way that he should step down and they need to bring forth a different candidate. I guess maybe that's why it's in June. That doesn't seem likely to me because I think there's enough argument to be had already if that's what they want, or if they feel that they can do that. But anyway, I think that's a fair enough point. I'm not convinced the debates will happen for many factors, but Democrat strategist, the Raging Cajun himself, James Carville, he was on MSNBC yesterday. And Jen Psaki said, what do you think Biden needs to do in this debate? Carville said he needs to hit this abortion issue home. Now, some polling has shown that that's not really going to be the deciding factor like they thought it originally was. But we knew that abortion was going to be the number one issue during this campaign. We've seen that abortion and quote unquote threat to democracy. But I'll continue. That is the first thing he should do. I'm not going to point to the Supreme Court. I'm not going to complain about the Supreme Court operating under the same ethics rules. The one issue I would kick hard, I wonder why it is not being kicked hard, is this $1 billion donation on the right to energy policies in the United States. He has outsourced energy policies. I cannot think of two better issues. I would just go after him on those two things really, really hard. So Psaki said he has agreed to two. I'm a little skeptical that it could happen because Trump is a liar. Do you think Biden could agree to more debates, or is two plenty for that reason? Okay. Keep in mind, Ronna McDaniel was not allowed to work at NBC because she had the audacity to one time work for former President Trump. So, for lack of a better term, the quote-unquote journalists at MSNBC, NBC whined until they got their way. The bosses are no longer in charge. The talent is in charge, and they dropped Ronna McDaniel. Okay. Jen Psaki saying at the time, well, I might have worked for Biden, but we were telling the truth. We were fighting for democracy. Think of how they do not hide their bias whatsoever. And then they lecture us about bias. Quote, because Trump is a liar. Unbelievable. So, I mean, would it be fair to say then, if we use her metrics, that it would be fair that if Ronna McDaniel or any conservative host or, well, they want to have a conservative talking head on MSNBC. There's your answer. But if they came on and just said, Biden's a liar, can you imagine the backlash? But this is what, and I didn't mean to go on that tangent, but this is what James Carville had to say. I'm with you. I don't think it's much better than 50-50 that he shows up on June 27th. I mean, it was a good talking point, but the way Trump's mind works, all I'm going to do is help him. Why risk it? I don't know. You prepare, but I share your skepticism. So they're not doing it from the standpoint that we see it from, or I'm not speaking for everybody out there, but for the comments that we've received. Speaking for that Biden does not want to do this. There's a lot of downside. And there's upside, but there's a lot of downside of if he doesn't look good, if he fumbles too much, if he makes a mistake like he said there, VP during the pandemic, those type of things, not going to play well for Biden. There's a reason, too, just to show you how wrong Psaki and Carville are. They're trying to put Biden in the power position here. The sitting president of the United States would not be calling for debates so early if he didn't realize his poll numbers were down. It's actually a very, very much a sign of weakness. And even Democrat, I think you can say far left, Bill Maher, said the similar, that this is a sign of weakness from the Biden administration, that he's the one that wanted the debates. Of course, Trump, even though was president, still, you have that lull in there. So, of course, he wanted a debate anytime, anywhere, any place, because we've seen the cognitive decline of Biden. So, I mean, to think that they're putting him in the power position, saying, no, at the end of the day, Trump still might not do it because he's a liar. This passes as news on MSNBC. Because he's a liar. He just might not want to do it. It would help Biden. Why would it help Biden? I mean, let's face it. Much of the success, other than the media, and they know this, showing Trump's rallies back in 2016, they got so many people over to his side saying, wow, this is what we need to hear. The debates helped him a lot, too, going after Hillary Clinton. So why would you can't equate this to why he didn't debate the Republicans. The polls showed he was number one. He had no upside to debating the Republicans' primary. Just no upside. So it's not as if he's scared. I mean, the debates are what probably put him over the edge to win back in 2016. So to put Biden in the power seat there is kind of laughable. But again, Carville believes only a 50% chance of presidential debates could happen. Not because Biden might be concerned about health and like that. No, it's because Trump is a liar. But did you see that Trump tops Biden in the April campaign cash dash? That's a heck of a headline, huh? With 5.5 months ago until the November election, former President Donald Trump enjoys the edge over President Biden in many national polls and surveys in the key battleground states that will likely decide the 2024 rematch. And in April, for the first time, Trump also enjoyed the lead in a monthly fundraising. The president's campaign announced on Monday evening that they and the Democratic National Committee hauled in over $51 million. Okay, that's not bad. $51 million from Biden and the Democrats. That's significantly less than the $76 million that the former president and the Republican National Committee raised in April. Wow, that's a heck of a difference, isn't it? 51 to 76. Team Trump and the RNC outraised Biden by $25 million in April. The fundraising totals are a switch from March, when Biden and the DNC brought in roughly $90 million compared to $65.6 million for Trump. Now, there has been a lot of talk about that, trailing in the money haul, but you're starting to see the crowds gathering for Trump. You're starting to see the money coming in. But yeah, Biden does have a lot of money that he'll be able to spend. All right, we got to take our first break. Then we're going to move away from that. One other thing about Biden, reading your comments when we come back. What do you think about the school vote? Today is the school vote. Don't forget. If you have any questions, I will try to help you. The times, as we mentioned, different for various polling locations. So you may want to call in advance. Corning doesn't start till 11. The rest seem to be open around 7 or 8. In Corning, there's the library, again, separate, but library's on there. A lot of different moving pieces. So if you do comment, if it would be helpful if you let me know what school district. But either way, I'm going to read all your messages about the school vote. And again, it's important. Don't forget to vote. Now we take that first break of the second hour in the most confusing way to say that. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. All right, we are back. Sorry, putting together all of our comments from viewers. Thank you to everybody reaching out, asking the question, where do you stand on today's vote? Now, obviously, there are many different school districts involved. We have talked about Corning a little bit and others. Here's a few comments. Just say no. education, not indoctrination. Thank you, viewer. Next, vote no on the budget. 67% of budget is for pay and benefits. Corning Library, also no. Where is the money going? Pay and benefits too high. Thank you. Any comment? I know we had a pro school budget earlier this morning, so I want to hear from you. Next comment. On a local issue that doesn't affect the Corning area, did you hear about the Chemung County Sewer District upgrade that is stretching over about 5 years and has ballooned from $300 million to about $400 million? Curiosity, when they noted the towns that the sewer tax is being raised by over 70% this year alone, with more raises to come, Elmira was not included. Just wondering if any of your viewers have more information. So we'll put that out to the viewers. Thank you very much for those comments. Speaking of rising costs, how do you like that segue? But please keep the comments coming in. And I forgot a couple waves there. Sorry, got caught up in the fun of reading all your comments. My favorite part of the program. So with Biden, we were talking earlier about obviously inflation and things that are hurting so many of us out there. I think this is a really good idea. An influential, fiscally conservative, and libertarian political advocacy group will work with gas stations across the country this week to remind Americans what the price at the pump was 4 years ago. Americans for Prosperity will host the first of a series of events that will roll back gas prices from coast to coast, quote, to get a pre-Bidenomics break at the pump. More than 20 gas stations will participate throughout the week, temporarily reducing prices as low as $2.38 per gallon, near the average price per gallon of gas the day Biden assumed office. Biden's war on American energy has seen disastrous results, and Americans are reeling from high gas prices going into the summer, said the vice president of Americans for Prosperity. From shutting down the Keystone Pipeline to banning energy leases on federal land, Joe Biden's top-down policies have stifled our country's energy resources and made even the things like a family road trip more expensive. This week, we are spotlighting that gas prices could be what they could be with policies that unleash our country's energy potential. What a great way, actually showing, because remember, they keep telling us that things aren't as bad as we are experiencing, especially when it comes to the economy. No, it's actually really good. And then the media will try to spin it by saying, well, people feel that way, but they don't understand why they feel that way. It's still, remember that one person suggested that it's not bad. You're just thinking it's still bad from when it was a little bit worse before. I mean, I guess we're supposed to ignore our receipt when we leave the grocery store. We're supposed to ignore what our bank accounts look like. I mean, that's what's interesting about inflation. They can tell us whatever they want to tell us, but at the end of the day, we experience it. We experience what it feels like to buy these things. So to keep telling us and pushing this lie that everything is okay, that's why I think events like this are really important to show people. Americans for Prosperity showing people what gas prices look like before Biden took over. The first gas rollback event kicked off Monday at 11 a.m. at the Sunoco station in Pittsburgh, and the event will continue through May 29th, closing at a gas station in Oregon. AFP expects at least 4,000 drivers to line up at gas stations this week to fill up their tanks at a bargain price. Senator Cynthia Lummis, a Republican, said since President Biden took office, his spending spree has resulted in the people of Wyoming paying nearly $1,200 more a month for basic goods and services. I look forward to joining Americans for Prosperity of Wyoming for this gas rollback event where people will not only save at the pump, but be reminded of the real impact the Biden administration has on our pocketbooks. I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. Gas prices were not immune to the high inflation rates that have plagued Biden's term, which peaked at 9% in 2022 and have since declined to 3.4%, still well above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. The national average price for a gallon of gas was $3.59 as of Monday, more than 50% more expensive than when Biden took office in January of 2021. Just an interesting idea there. Okay, let's talk a little bit here about Michael Cohen. Boy, that got a little sloppy yesterday, didn't it? A little messy. An attorney who once represented Michael Cohen testified yesterday that Donald Trump's fixer-turned-foe had told him the ex-president, quote, knew nothing about the hush money to Stormy Daniels. moments before irking the judge by rolling his eyes and muttering on the stand. Yeah, we've learned from the judge. And am I saying it right? I thought it was Merchant, but I heard Jake Tapper yesterday say it. Mercan? I have to be full disclaimer here, full disclaimer mode for a moment. This goes back to my radio station days. I end up reading so many transcripts as compared to watching that sometimes I, as you are well aware by now, after over a year on the air here on television, that I don't always get names 100% correct. But Mercan, I don't know. Anyway, that was just a side question. One thing we know about Mercan is that he definitely doesn't like anybody making noises look what Trump, same kind of thing. You can't intimidate the witness. Anyway, Bob Costello, the second witness called by Trump's lawyers at his Manhattan criminal trial, contradicted previous testimony by Cohen that the real estate mogul was aware of the deal to pay Daniels $130,000 to silence her story. You know all about that. Michael Cohen said numerous times that President Trump knew nothing about those payments, that he did this on his own, and he repeated that numerous times, claimed Costello. Cohen also whined him that I don't understand why they're trying to put me in jail over non-disclosure agreements, such as the one struck with Daniels. Costello, a former federal prosecutor in New York, added from the stand. Tensions flared minutes later after Costello grew visibly peeved, muttering under his breath, and that's when the tough judge, Juan Mercan, sustained several objections from prosecutors to his testimony. Geez, he explained at one point. And that's when the judge got annoyed and said, I'm sorry. And then there's some staring down. I find it weird, too, that a judge says something about side eye. There's proper decorum. You don't say geez. If you don't like my ruling, you don't give me side eye, and you don't roll your eyes. And then he asked, are you staring me down right now? Are you staring me down right now? And that's when the judge cleared the courtroom, forcing reporters into the hallway. Behind closed doors, the judge laid into Costello and threatened to remove him from the stand. Sir, your conduct is contemptuous right now, Mercan said. I'm putting you on notice that your conduct is contemptuous. If you try to stare me down one more time, I will remove you from the stand. Boy, I guess the part of me, when you think about lawfare, when a witness is effective for Trump, or when it is Trump, that seems to be when Mercan gets very upset, huh? Isn't that interesting? That's when, you're not allowed to roll your eyes or say, geez. This sounds like pretty petty things, really. Addressing Bove, Mercan added, I will strike his entire testimony. Do you understand me? Something that seems to be playing into Trump's favor and not just... he doesn't stop it when Stormy Daniels gets into salacious details. That was okay. There was none of this tough-talking judge saying, I will strike this from the record. None of that. Even saying after the fact, Trump's team probably should have demanded that we stop that more, object to that more, even though they objected to Stormy Daniels ever being called in the first place. So Costello said, can I say something, please? And that's when the judge replied, no, this is not a conversation. I don't know. It gets a little bit weird for me, but we have a couple things we're going to talk about with Cohen. When we come back, I see comments coming in. Again, weigh in on the school budget, weigh in on the school vote. I would love to hear from you. And stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, we will be right back. And we are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. What do you think about that commercial? The Frankly Delicious launch. It does sound delicious. I'm going to have to try that at Pangea Global Tea House. The Frankly Delicious Turkey Club and a beer. Sounds pretty nice right about now, doesn't it? That'll be fun. If anybody tries that, heads out, let me know. I'd love to read your statement on it on the air. Also, a couple other statements from viewers. Good morning, Frank. I will vote no. Seniors on fixed incomes cannot pay these school taxes in Corning. A $9 million increase from last year. Where does it stop? And that seems to be the reaction in most cases this morning. I know it's at a time when we talk about inflation, we talk about struggling and the struggling economy, and we talk about the increased taxes in New York in general and the budget in New York. It's just tough to get another huge increase in your mailbox. So today, Judge Merchan, that's what one person suggested, Merchan could rule today, this morning, on Trump defense attorney's motion to dismiss the case against the former president altogether after the prosecution rested its case following days of testimony from its star witness. I believe that would be the right move if he did end the trial right there. I don't believe he will. This is obviously a politically minded lawfare type campaign because we have yet to know what the crimes he's actually being charged with. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg charged Trump with 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Prosecutors must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump falsified business records 34 times to conceal a $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels in the lead up to the 2016 election. Again, this is putting federal campaign rules outside of Bragg's jurisdiction. This should have been thrown out a long time ago. At the end of the court day, Trump defense attorney Todd Blanche asked for an immediate order of dismissal, saying there's no evidence that the filings or business records at the center of the case were false, but there are absolutely no false business filings. Blanche said there is no dispute that Cohen acted as a personal attorney for Trump in 2017, and there's no evidence or intent by Trump to mislead, hide, or falsify business records. Do you think there is any chance unless Merchan's whole goal was to just have the embarrassing parts get out with Stormy as a kind of punishment against Trump? Because you can tell, I mean, it's as so many have said, a far blue state you're dealing with here, a far blue, dark blue judge whose daughter works as a Democrat consultant. I mean, the list goes on and on how many things are stacked against Trump. So I don't see him ending it there. But it was interesting about Cohen because as I mentioned a little bit earlier on the program, Ellie Honig from CNN, she's the senior legal analyst, saying the way this was raised and addressed on direct is what Julia Louis-Dreyfus would call yada, yada, yada. The direct testimony, the way Michael Cohen explained what happened. Michael Cohen explained this whole thing, quote, that's what was owed, and I didn't feel Mr. Trump deserved the difference. That's a lot different than I stole $60,000 from my boss on the transaction at the heart of this case. And by the way, the fact that he was ever charged with larceny is important because stealing $60,000 through fraud, which would be larceny in New York, is more serious of a crime than falsifying business records. So Cohen admitted to a crime far worse. But Andrew McCarthy says under another day of withering cross-examinations, Michael Cohen admitted that he stole $60,000 from the Trump Organization. Between February and December of 2017, Cohen was paid $35,000 per month by the former president. Alvin Bragg has suggested that Cohen was not actually retained to do real work as Trump's lawyer during this time. Instead, prosecutors say Cohen was principally paid to reimburse him for $130,000 he laid out to purchase the silence of Stormy Daniels. Cohen also asked for a reimbursement of the $50,000 he'd paid a digital services company called Redfinch for assistance in spinning poll results. The Trump Organization agreed to reimburse Cohen for the Stormy and Redfinch expenses and even doubled the amount so that Cohen would not suffer a tax hit. Another $60,000 bonus was added for a total of $420,000, 1 year of work, $35,000 a month. Yet Cohen conceded during cross-examinations that he did not actually pay $50,000 to Redfinch. He persuaded the company to take $20,000 and pocketed the extra $30,000. In fact, he pocketed more than $30,000. Remember, the Trump Organization doubled the Redfinch payment to protect Cohen from tax liability. The revelation that Cohen stole from Trump in a deal over which Bragg has indicted Trump but never charged Cohen was yet another major wound for the credibility of the star witness. Cohen is a convicted perjurer, fraudster, and tax cheat. Now you can add chief to his ever-growing resume. Thief to his ever-growing resume. Tongue-tied. Moreover, the defense persuasively argues that it caught Cohen in another lie under oath last week. He claimed that he had alerted Trump about the completion of the Stormy Daniels non-disclosure agreement in a brief October 2016 phone call. But text evidence that emerged in court last week showed that the call actually involved Cohen's attempt to report a 14-year-old prankster to the Secret Service for making prank phone calls. It strains What's it say here? As Cohen did, that maybe he spoke about both the 14-year-old and the Stormy deal in a 90-second phone call. Maybe that's what we're supposed to believe. One in which there is no evidence other that Cohen says so, that he spoke with Trump. Blanche's cross-examination of Cohen wrapped up. As the 3 grueling days played out, it became increasingly obvious why federal prosecutors elected not to bring a case against Trump based on Cohen's story. Alvin Bragg made a different decision. He'll have to live with the consequences. Will he have to live with the consequences? I don't see this, no matter win, lose, or draw, this hurts Bragg. This is what Bragg said he was going to do. This is popular. You kidding me? The stories that they got out of Stormy Daniels, this is going to make him popular because he tried to take down Trump. Never mind what this does to the legal system, to the justice system in the United States and the precedent this set. Because don't think for a minute, and no matter how many times they tell you this, that no, don't worry, this is a one and done type thing. It's just about Trump. Nonsense. This is going to happen anytime, especially if it's successful, to any Republican candidate, Republican president. They will fabricate, twist themselves up into pretzels to make some type of law that was not broken, et cetera, to bring down the potential president of the United States. Now, thank you to everybody who's commenting, by the way. We'll get to some more comments in just a moment. As I mentioned, we had so much to talk about this morning. We do not have a Steuben Senior Services Fund interview this morning, but I want to thank Linda from Steuben Senior Services for coming on the show yesterday to tell us a little bit about what they have to offer. It's an amazing organization. I'm so glad they're a part of the broadcast. So I thank them. Again, as a reminder, if you're just getting ready to go into work or into school, today is the school vote, and we'll try to do the best we can tomorrow, bring you all the coverage to let you know where everybody stands, where the budgets are, where the candidates are. It's a big vote. I know a lot of people discouraged at the increases. That's according to kind of a straw poll we're taking here with viewers this morning with the increases specifically in Corning, but I know elsewhere as well. So let me know where you stand. It doesn't matter. We've read pro-budget. We've read anti-budget. I just want to hear from you and what your thoughts on today's school vote are. All right, we've got to take a short break. Right? I felt like I had a little more housekeeping to do right there, but I think we're good. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, more about the trial. Got a couple other things here that we will try to get to. If you missed us in the 6 o'clock hour, you missed a lot. We talked about that great, and actually, I don't have it in front of me, I don't think. But we know that Biden sent his condolences in regards to the Iran president. The United States expresses its official condolences for the death of Iranian president and foreign minister. Congressman Nick Langworthy, and I played this so early this morning that if you missed it, I apologize if you already heard this, but I thought it was such a powerful statement from our congressman, and I hadn't seen a lot of comments on this, so it was nice to see him put out this statement. It's a little small for me, so I'm going to try here. It's absolutely outrageous and un-American that the Biden administration sent condolences to Iran for the death of President Ibrahim Raisi, known as the Butcher of Tehran. This is a man responsible for massacring political prisoners and dissidents, propagating terrorism, and committing countless other crimes against humanity. President Biden's actions not only undermine the values we stand for as a nation, but also disrespect the countless victims who suffered under Raisi. This is another disgusting example of President Biden's appeasement of Iran and weakness on the world stage that emboldens terrorist regimes, threatening global stability and our way of life. And again, I know I keep hitting on this point, but what does Hamas think of us? We send our condolences to Iran. We're weakening on our stance with Israel day in and day out because obviously Biden's more worried about votes. I guess I can take that off the screen. More worried about votes. So he changes his foreign policy because of obnoxious protesters on college campuses. Pro-Hamas chants, intimidation of Jewish students, violence, destruction. That is now, I guess, helping form our foreign policy. But then you see the kids on college campuses protesting as well. Hamas just must be laughing at us. And I'm glad that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called out the protests on campuses a few times now because it is spreading. That hate spreads like a cancer, and we're seeing it, and that's why Biden is so scared and why he wants to appease those. And you can't even say they're radical, but you can't even say it's a fringe group any longer. I believe it is a major part of his party. So that was a fun tangent to get on to. When we come back, more about Trump's trial. Keep those comments coming in. I like reading them on the air, so please, you see the number on the bottom of your screen, 607-358-3131. We're going to take that short break, and then we will be right back after this. Our beautiful view of Market Street on this also beautiful day. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Here's a comment from a viewer. We're talking a little bit here about school budgets because today is the vote. Less and less people live in our area. Schools have been combined because of less students. Public schools aren't even teaching basic skills. More children are being homeschooled, yet they want more and more money for a crumbling infrastructure that was the backbone for future society. Common Core has proven to be the worst thing that could have been implemented. Since Common Core existence, each graduating class has been proven to be less prepared for the real world than the previous years. Thank you for the comments. Keep them coming in, pro or con. I want to hear all of them about today's budget vote. So Greg Jarrett believes that Michael Cohen offered a surprise that could sink the prosecution's plan. Cohen was already shredded on cross-examination last week as a liar who is bereft of conscience and devoid of decency. His depravity knows no bounds. Append embezzlement to his menagerie of crimes that already include fraud, perjury, and tax evasion. He belongs back in prison, not in a court of law peddling more falsehoods. Without batting an eye of remorse, Cohen on Monday coolly admitted that he stole $30,000 from the Trump Organization. But Cohen didn't stop there. He then pilfered an additional $30,000 by inflating the remuneration that he charged Trump. The DA knew all about the larceny. Instead of charging him criminally, they made him their central witness in the case against Trump. Who says crime doesn't pay? What a good point. They didn't charge him. They knew. Bragg and his prosecutors never hesitated to hang their crooked case on a notorious shyster who is incapable of telling the truth. They expected Cohen to lie to the jury, which he happily did. They enabled and encouraged his deceptions. The district attorney could indict himself for perjury. This trial is now officially a sad and pathetic joke. It's a circus. Merchant and Bragg are the head clowns. When Cohen finally slithered off the stand, the prosecution rested its case. In a risky move, the defense then called his former attorney, Robert Costello, who was no longer bound by the attorney-client privilege. It was a moment of high drama as a veteran lawyer who was once a top federal prosecutor pummeled his one-time client as a habitual liar. Now, to prevail, the DA must show that Trump understood campaign laws, knew he was violating them, and intended to deceive voters in 2016 when the payments were booked as legal expenses in 2017. During 5 weeks of trial testimony, no one has offered such evidence. Moreover, it's factually impossible to influence an election after it is over. What a great point. I mean, this is what I mean. It's laughable. Do you think Merchant will make that decision to throw out the case? In a fair, objective, or neutral, if a fair, objective, or neutral judge was presiding, this shabby case would have been tossed long before the trial ever began. Still on Monday, the defense moved to dismiss the charges against Trump. Judge Mercan deferred his decision, but his futile gesture. There's not a snowball's chance. A competent judge would grant a directed verdict in favor of the accused because there is no legal sufficient evidence for a reasonable jury to reach a different conclusion. The case is wholly dependent on a proven liar, nothing else. But Mercan is all in on convicting Trump. Yes, he's a part of this lawfare. It does not matter what this does. The precedent this does. The lost trust, if there was some recently, in the judicial system. There are sound reasons why federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, as well as Bragg's predecessor, Cyrus Vance, chose not to charge Trump. They abided by ethical standards and refused to exploit or manipulate a lying witness like Cohen. They also understood that the law did not support an indictment, not even close. It should be patently obvious to all that the leading Republican candidate for president is on trial not for what he has done, but for who he is. Exactly. And they even try saying it's a one and done. Yes, it's just because it's Trump. They're not even necessarily hiding it. Trump is the political nemesis of Democrats. He is their boogeyman, or if you watch the movie True Grit, Booger Man. Biden despises him. Bragg loathes him. And so does Merchant, who has taken it upon himself to serve as a co-prosecutor in this case. Collectively, they're all counting on a liberal New York jury to also hate Trump enough to ignore the law and convict based on animus. That, in a nutshell, is the case. The deck is stacked and the fix is in. It's a persecution, not a prosecution. Bragg has abused his position of power and spent tens of millions of dollars to denigrate an electoral enemy to benefit his opponent, President Joe Biden. The DA falsely asserts that Trump unlawfully tried to influence the 2016 election. But it is Bragg who is guilty of interfering in the 2024 election. That's why I bring this up. And I know we've made that statement before. But to bring him up on interfering unlawfully in the 2016 election when that's exactly what Bragg is doing, it's very much like when we see people talk about Trump being a threat to democracy as they try to keep him off the ballots, as they try to unlawfully use lawfare to go after him. Merchan is actively aiding and abetting this contemptible assault on our legal system. He has done everything conceivable to engineer a guilty verdict. Late Monday, he took offense when Costello looked at him the wrong way. The judge became irate, demanded that the courtroom be cleared, and exonerated the witness. Are you staring me down? The trial is now officially a sad and pathetic joke. It's a circus. Merchan and Bragg are the head clowns. Only the jurors can halt to this miscarriage of justice. But here's the big question. Will they? That's the million-dollar question. We've got a couple comments we'll read here. When we come back, I've got to take another short break. We are moving right along. Boy, we've covered a lot this morning. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. A comment from a viewer. I agree with the person that commented on Common Core. Most teachers and teachers' aides don't like Common Core, but are required to follow it. We're talking school budgets today. Today is the school vote, so don't forget. I know a little out of habit voting. It's always kind of weird in May like this, but do not forget to get out and vote. We'll have all the coverage of what happened tomorrow. And if you want to weigh in right before we wrap things up on which direction you'd like people to go, feel free. Jonathan Turley, who we quote a lot on this program, who's done, I think, a fantastic job in his coverage of the Trump hush money trial. But Jonathan Turley says the completion of the testimony of Michael Cohen left the prosecution of Donald Trump like its star witness in tatters. In the final days of cross-examination, Cohen admitted to committing larceny. Even more notably, he admitted to the larceny on the stand after the statute of limitations had passed. There will be no dead felony zapped back into life against Cohen as it was for Trump. Cohen clearly has found a home for his unique skill as a convicted, disbarred serial perjurer. It was not the first time that prosecutors looked the other way, as Cohen admitted to major criminal conduct. In a prior hearing, Cohen admitted under oath that he lied in a previous case where he pleaded guilty to lying. If that is still a bit confusing, it was just another day in the life of Michael Cohen, who appears only willing to tell the truth if he has no other alternative. The result is truly otherworldly. You have a disbarred lawyer not only casually discussing lies and uncharged crimes, but prosecutors who proceed to get him to remind the jury that he is not facing any further criminal charges. And any one of those jurors had stolen tens of thousands of dollars, they'd be given a fast trip to jail. Yet Cohen then matter-of-factly said he plans to run for Congress due to his name recognition. The ultimate proof that it does not matter whether you are famous or infamous, so long as they spell your name right. As a legislator, Cohen would have the unique ability to say he will not be corrupted by Congress, because he came to Congress corrupted. While most members wait to take office to commit felonies, Representative Cohen would show up with a self-affirming criminal record. He could then take one of the few oaths that he has not previously violated as the Honorable Representative Michael Cohen. At the end of the day, Cohen is the ultimate shining object for prosecutors to use as a distraction from the glaring omission in their case. Prior witness testified that Trump's payment to Cohen were designated as legal expense, not by Trump, but by his accounting staff. Moreover, Cohen admitted that he worked for Trump for years in his murky capacity as a fixer. References to payments as a retainer were approved by Alan Weisselberg, a retired executive with the Trump Organization. The legal expense label was a natural characterization for a lawyer who was paid monthly and was on call as Trump's personal counsel. In any other district, this case would never have been allowed in trial. It certainly now should be facing a directed verdict by the court. Indeed, with any other defendant, a New York jury would be given a Bronx cheer and derision. Even CNN hosts and experts have admitted that this case would never have been brought against any other defendant or in any other district. This is what Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is counting on. The biggest problem facing the defense is not the evidence, but the judge. Judge McCann seems to be channeling George Patton's warning, "May God have mercy upon my enemies, because I won't." McCann has not given any indication that he is seriously considering a directed verdict, which he should clearly grant before this goes to the jury. McCann's ruling have largely favored the prosecution, including some rulings that left some of us mystified. Judge McCann continues to allow the jury to hear references to campaign finance violations that do not exist. After gutting any use of legal experts to testify on the absence of any such violations, the judge allowed the jury to hear Michael Cohen state that the payments to Stormy Daniels were clearly campaign violations. All that Merchant would offer is a weak instruction telling jurors not to take such statement as proof of a violation. The alleged campaign finance violation allowed Cohen to try to implicate Trump. However, it is doubtful that Trump could have been convicted on such a charge in any other venue. It is precisely what the Justice Department tried and failed to do with John Edwards, a Democrat candidate. After that unmitigated failure, the Justice Department dropped this theory of hush money as a campaign contribution. Indeed, after reviewing the Trump payments, not only did the Justice Department decline any charges, but the Federal Election Commission did not even seek a civil fine. On Monday, Judge McCann's orders became even more inexplicable when Cohen's former attorney Robert Costello took the stand. McCann immediately started to sustain a flurry of prosecutors' objections as Costello basically accused Cohen of multiple acts of perjury. At one point, Costello, one of the most experienced lawyers in New York and a former prosecutor, exclaimed that one of the judge's rulings was ridiculous. The judge chastised Costello and even challenged him, "Are you staring me down?" In fact, it was not hard to stare. What is happening in the courtroom of Judge Juan McCann is anything but ordinary. I thought that was a really good piece. Coming out of the New York Post by Jonathan Turley. Okay, we got to wrap things up here. I got to take one last break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here at WYDC TV. Big Fox, get those last minute comments in before we wrap up. And we are back. Last few comments here. Here's a comment from a viewer. With regard to the school budget, it will pass, no matter what. Unfortunately, there is no accountability with regard to the school system. Citizens would never vote it down because they simply would never deprive our children of their right to a quality education. And yet teachers and administrators are not held accountable if some of the students aren't successful in their education. I do think that's a good point. I would probably err on your side as well that it will pass, even though it's huge increases, because it goes back to, and it was a smart political campaign here in Corning where they kept the signs up that said "Vote yes for kids." Anyway, tugging at the heartstrings, right? Will Trump run as a felon? A big 2024 question will soon be answered. This article just assuming that it is going to go to the jury. I think that's a fair assumption. But listen to this. I just got to show you how the media operates. Mr. Murphy, a Republican strategist. Okay, so this is a Republican strategist. Said Mr. Trump's daily courthouse remarks before the cameras, even with fawning supporters arrayed behind him, have undermined the strongman image he seeks to protect. Quote, his brand is strength. What he likes to do is be cocky in front of an adoring crowd. Instead, he said, the commentary has made Mr. Trump look more like a old mangy lion caught in a net. The whole vibe of caged, defeated animal is bad for Trump. When did you see that? When he's in the court? I mean, he has no choice. Whatever. But even CNN had to admit, I changed my mind about the strength of the prosecution's case against Donald Trump. Here's why. The defense can easily argue that Trump was running the presidency in D.C. and no longer micromanaging what was going on in New York at the Trump Organization. If he signed checks put in front of him, they could have easily been part of a busy work pile to be FedExed back to the company with Trump barely paying attention. If so, there would have been no intent to falsify the business records. Without Weisenberg's testimony about what Trump knew or intended, the prosecution only has Cohen to rely on. That might not be enough for a conviction. I would hope it's not enough for a conviction. That does it. Wow. Are we really out of time? Yep, I am. Oh, there's another piece in the New York Post. Hunter Biden now claims he didn't introduce dad to Burisma executive, despite admitting they dined together. And it turns out, I hate the fact they call him this guy, but this sugar brother, the guy that's been giving him so much money, helping him out so much, Kevin Morris, I guess he's completely tapped out. He's broke. Oof. Chuck Schumer is going to put a standalone border bill up this week, according to Politico. The move to take up the legislation, which isn't expected to pass, comes as Biden prepares to issue border-focused executive actions. Yes, this is an example where they say that he knows exactly what he's doing, but Republicans won't negotiate. But what negotiate means to them is give in on every single issue, and then you're working across the aisle. So give in to everything the Democrats want, and then it's bipartisan. then you're reaching across the aisle. Then you're a maverick. So we're out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you for all the comments. Don't forget to vote today, the school vote. If you have any questions, you can find out online where your polling place is. Just go to your school district's website. I know pretty much all the school districts around here have a vote. So make sure that you don't forget, set your alarm. And also set your alarm to join us tomorrow morning starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, where we'll have all your results of the school board election at that time. So have a great day, everyone. We will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. I look forward to it already.